Welcome back to a championship week edition of Calculated Risk. I'm Tyler Shoemaker, joined as always by Kelley Ford. Got, a small slate of games, obviously, this week, but impactful games, championships, trophies on the line, playoff berths, bowl destinations, all that's on the line this weekend. Kelley, what are your initial thoughts here on championship week?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, Tyler. This is what teams work all year for. And you got trophies on the line, and it means a ton to these fan bases, to these teams, to these programs. And there's a lot to be decided in terms of college football playoff spots, in terms of New Year's Six spots. And it's going to be really, really fun. I am excited for this weekend of games. I do love the regular season, of course, but it was a great one. Now we get to see the best that each conference has to offer. We're going to break down a few of them as we always do, and it'll be good. I'm curious to see, honestly, Tyler, and I can't help myself but to look forward. I'm curious how the buildup in this week, as it's been for the last 10 years in the 14 playoff era, will compare to what it's like starting next year. Because right now, all the talk this week, almost ad nauseum, has been about how do the results of this week, how do the results of this week's games impact the four teams that make the playoff and who gets left out. And as you think about the cut line right now, it's between 4 and 5. Next year, the cut line is between 12 and 13, or probably 11 and 12, right? If you've got a spot reserved for a G5 who's probably going to be ranked below that line. But so it's not going to necessarily be every single game has massive implications on which team makes it or doesn't. It'll be maybe for seeding, for the buys, all that stuff. However, there is the potential for, like, example, this week, we've got in a couple of these Power 5 games, like Oklahoma State, they're number 18, right? That's currently on the outside looking in of even a 12-team playoff. Same thing with Louisville at number 14. But you get an automatic bid into the playoff if you win your conference championship. I mean, from the Power 5 level, essentially is guaranteed plus then one G5. So those are now bid stealers. I mean, it's March Madness terms. They're bid stealers, and that bubble, we talk about the bubble in basketball, it goes from being, that number 11 team in the committee's rankings to, oh, shoot, we had a bid steal. Now it's the number 10 team. Another bid steal. Now it's number 9. It will be interesting to see the conversation next year during this week as it relates to bid stealing. And also, we kind of know the committee's not going to change who's number 8, 9, and 10 if they're not playing, because the same number of teams are going to be playing next week or next year at this time. 8, 9, and 10 may not be playing. They're not going to move in the rankings most likely. So you're already going to know, like, these are how these teams stack up. There's nothing less to add to their resumes. Where does that cut line fall because of the bid stealers? It's going to be a whole different feel. We'll talk about it then, but I couldn't help but I've thought about the scenarios this week enough. And I'm like, how is this going to play out next year? It's very interesting. So that's what's been on my mind this week.
Yeah. And again, not to get too far down this path, because we got a whole off season to talk through that stuff. But one other thing to consider there is, like, you're pretty much going to have divisionless conferences next year as well. So we could potentially be talking about, like an Ohio State Michigan rematch, for instance. Things like that are also going to change the conversation of this week. I mean, imagine if Ohio State and Michigan were playing again this week. Like, the conversation, the narrative around that would be crazy. And, it's probably not too far-fetched to think it could happen. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, let's dive into the SEC. I will kick us off. Huge clash of the Titans in Atlanta, Georgia and Alabama. Georgia's my number 5 power-rated team, which, as we've discussed a million times, like, taking a little bit of heat on that they're not rated higher. I get it. But, from a resume standpoint, though, I do have them number 3 at least, versus Alabama, who's number 10 in my power ratings, number 7 in my resume rankings. Offensively, Alabama's offense is the lowest rated unit in this game, number 17 in the country. I've got their defense number 7. Georgia, I have number 8 on both sides of the ball. So Georgia, top 10 unit on both sides, well-rounded. We obviously know what they're capable of. The line currently sitting Georgia minus 5.5. I project this Georgia minus 2.5. I wrote about this in my VSiN.com best bets article this week. I'm taking Alabama plus the 5.5. It was 6 earlier in the week. I took 6, but I mean, I would play that down to probably plus 4. I think Alabama's going to keep this within a field goal, one way or the other. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they won the game outright. But I do think Georgia's the better team. But I think Alabama can keep it within this number. And I do project the total at 51, which is a little bit lower than the 55.5 that I saw earlier. So I would expect that total to tick down. The only thing that concerns me with the total, though, is in these kind of heavyweight matchups, playoff type games, we have seen a lot more scoring. Like the offenses really do tend to show up, I think. So I don't know that I'd want to play it under here, but from a betting perspective, I am on Alabama plus the points here.
Yeah, and Tyler, my numbers would tend to agree with you here in this one. These are the two giants of the conference, the two favorites coming into the year. They clashing in Atlanta as they have in recent years, not last year, but in recent years. In all likelihood, a trip to the CFP on the line. Georgia's the better team. My numbers tell me that, and my eyes tell me that as well. But I said the same thing, Tyler, in 2021 going into the SEC championship game, and Alabama went into Mercedes-Benz and beat the Bulldogs. It's actually the last time Georgia lost a football game was the SEC championship in 2021. So I don't think this is some foregone conclusion that Georgia's going to win this game, even though my numbers and my eyes tell me they're the better team. The best and most even matchup in this game should be the number 4 Georgia offense against the number 6 Alabama defense. I'm very excited to see how Carson Beck performs against the strongest defense he's faced yet in his career. The biggest difference in this game is likely to be made on the other side, though. The only unit that doesn't rank in the top 6 nationally for me is the Alabama offense. They come in at number 15, but Milroe and company have improved significantly since being ranked, I should say, number 29 earlier this year. Will they be able to score enough points against this number 5 ranked Georgia defense? That, of course, is the big question. Georgia's undefeated. They're the 2-time defending national champs. They don't lose often. I said it just a minute ago. The last time they lost was 2 years ago exactly in 2021, the SEC championship game to this Alabama program. But in the back of their minds, Tyler, this is something that's not being talked about enough, I don't think. I feel like they have to know that there's a scenario out there in which a loss knocks them out of the CFP. It's the only time all year they've been playing with that kind of pressure on them. It's the only, I don't think they played with that kind of pressure on them last year either, because even if they lost to LSU in the SEC championship game, they probably get in over the team that the committee put in at number 4, Ohio State, anyway. So this is really the first time in a long time, more than a year, 2 years, that Georgia's playing a game thinking if we lose, there goes our chance to win the national championship game. So, or to win the national championship. So I'm curious, how will they respond to that? Kirby, he's got them buttoned up. He gets them ready to go. He gets them motivated. He's a really good coach. You don't win 30 games in a row and 2 national championships without being that. So maybe it's nothing. But I just don't think enough people are talking about that, and that's a lot of pressure for some kids, some young men who haven't really experienced that, at least in their playing careers at Georgia here recently. So bottom line, I have Georgia -2. It's a 44% chance that the Tide potentially put the committee in a really tough spot on Sunday.
Yeah, and interesting nugget here from a betting standpoint. I don't know the last time that Alabama won. They're rarely an underdog, obviously. But even when they are an underdog, they're a really public team. A lot of people are betting on them. I just took a peek at the VSiN, the DraftKings bet splits. 65% of the bets and 73% of the money are on Georgia, which is a rare kind of split. You don't see Alabama, as the public team the public is not backing. So that's interesting to me. So again, I'm on Bama. We'll see how it goes, but it should be a great game either way. Moving on to the Pac-12 in a game that, obviously has huge CFP implications. Kelly, I'll let you kick us off here with the Pac-12.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this game. Shoot, man, it's college football. I get excited about just about all of them, but this is a really good one. And I want to start by saying there are a lot of similarities between this Washington team this year and last year's TCU team. And I've said that on X a couple times now, and I feel like Washington fans are offended by that. It's not an insult. Like, TCU played for the national championship a year ago. Only Georgia had a better season than the Horned Frogs. It was an amazing year in Fort Worth in 2022, just as it's been an amazing year in Seattle in 2023. Like, that's not an insult, guys. It's really not, but there's no getting around it. Oregon is playing like the better team, and they have been since that loss in Seattle in week 7. Oregon's been my number 1 rated offense since week 10. Now the defense is playing at a season best level, number 14 nationally. The Ducks are my number 3 power rated team overall. Only Jacksonville State and Arizona have improved their power rating more since the preseason than Oregon for me, Tyler. Does this team have a top 4 resume? No. And it's really not even that close as things stand right now based on my most deserving rankings. But is Oregon a top 4 best team? My numbers say yes. Flip that around, and you have the Washington Huskies, a team that definitely has a top 4 resume. Probably not a top 4 team from the power rating standpoint, though. Washington's number 1 in my record achievement metric. There is just a 1% chance. Let me say it again. A 1% chance that the average top 25 team would be undefeated against Washington's schedule. The Huskies are number 3 in my most deserving rankings. But from a power rating standpoint, there is a reason here that the spread is more than a touchdown. Shoot, it's all the way up to 10 now at time of recording, at least. I have Washington power rated number 13. It's a spot they've held since week 10. The offense is elite. They've been in my top 5 since week 2. But the defense is merely top 40, Tyler. Will it be able to slow down Bo Nix and that Ducks offense away from Husky Stadium? Remember, that first game was in Seattle. I think that played a big difference. I'm not convinced that it can. Bottom line, I've got Oregon minus 8.5. It's a 28% chance that Washington reaches 13 wins for the first time in program history.
Yeah, you hit on the main point that I wanted to make is in that, I've got Oregon power rated number 2, Washington power rated number 14, but then from a resume standpoint, Washington is my number 2 team, Oregon's number 9. So these teams are kind of flipped. And so this is, the committee came out and said, this week that their job is to put the 4 best teams in. And that is objectively not true. They don't put the 4 best teams in, they put the 4 most deserving teams in. That's pretty clearly established because I don't know a single power rating that has Washington in the top 4.
Or that had TCU in the top 4 last year.
Right. Exactly. So,
or that had Michigan State in the top 4 in 2015. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not it.
And I'm not even faulting them for using that criteria.
No, not at all.
Just own it. Just say we put the 4 most deserving teams in. That's all you have to say. Don't lie. We're not dumb. Washington, I've got number 13. They've kind of tumbled here. I think, they were in my top 3 at one point. They're down to number 13. They've had some clunkers offensively, over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And the defense, you talked about it. I've got them number 30, and they're going against the number 4 offense in my numbers and the number 5 defense. So Oregon better on both sides of the ball, according to my numbers. I project this right in line with Vegas. I'm at Oregon minus 10. The interesting thing here for me, I project a total at 56, and the last time I checked, the consensus was 67. So an 11-point discrepancy here on the total. Again, don't know that I want to bet a total in these kind of talent equated games, for lack of a better term. Like these playoff type games tend to be pretty pointsy. So I don't know that I want to play it under here, even despite a big discrepancy in my projection. All right, that'll do it for the Pac-12. Moving on, we're gonna talk some G5. We're gonna talk the American Championship, which lost a little bit of its luster with SMU quarterback Preston Stone going out with a leg injury. He will be out for this game. I believe he's done for the season. However, SMU is my number 12 power rated team going against Tulane, who's number 29. And my numbers, if you recall, my numbers early in the season, especially in the preseason, were really high on Tulane, but once the season kind of got going, SMU jumped up and they have stayed. They've been a top 25, top 30 team for me pretty much all year, and like I said, they're up to number 12 now. SMU's offense, again, everything I say, just understand is their team aggregate data, assuming they were fully healthy, which they're not, obviously. But SMU offense number 9 and their defense number 17 went against the Tulane offense that I had to double check this. I have the Tulane offense number 86. I only project them to score 23.5 points against the average FBS team. That was shockingly bad for them. However, as I mentioned earlier this year, they're carried by their defense. Their defense I have number 9 in the country. So a pretty one-sided approach here from Tulane. They've had some really really just mediocre performances against, kind of bad G5 teams over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now, they did take care of business last week against UTSA. So that was a good win for them. And, if that's a Tulane team that shows up, I think they absolutely could win. However, they're 3.5-point favorites in this game. I project SMU as a 7.5-point favorite, again, assuming perfectly healthy team. So even if you want to tell me that Preston Stone is worth 5, 6, 7 points, which I think would be a stretch, I would say it's probably more like 5. That still doesn't get me anywhere near Tulane being a 3.5-point favorite. So this is another game that I wrote up in my VSiN article this week as a best bet. I took SMU plus the points here, and I project the total at 47.5. Currently sitting at 52.5. This actually would be an under I would consider if you wanted to play the total in this game instead of the side. I do like the under. Like I said, Tulane's defense very good. SMU going to be without their quarterback. If I was going to play the total, I would definitely take the under here.
Yeah, Tyler, even without Stone at quarterback, even at Ullman Stadium, because remember, this is a home game for Tulane. Both teams 8-0 in conference play, but they win the tiebreaker there, and the American uses number 1 seed gets to host. Even with those factors, I think the wrong team's favored in this game. Even if you downgrade the SMU offense significantly, it's still just about a wash, I would say, with the Tulane defense that I have ranked number 34. And on the other side, remember, Preston Stone doesn't play on the other side. The SMU defense, they're playing at a season best level, ranking number 35 right now in the country. They're going up against a Tulane offense that currently ranks a season worst, number 58 for me. So your Tulane unit ranks are a little bit more extreme on both ends than me, but I agree with you that it is the defense that's certainly the better of the two units, and it's not particularly close. But I mean, how many points are we given for Preston Stone here? How many points are we given for home field advantage? Like this just seems like a wildly inaccurate line. It really does. I mean, unless I could end up looking silly. Really dumb on this one, I guess. But I think SMU wins this one outright. Yes, Tulane has the inside track to returning to the New Year's Six as the G5 rep. But the only other time the Green Wave faced a top 50 power rated team this year, top 50, they lost at home to Ole Miss. Now, SMU, especially without Stone, is not Ole Miss. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm saying Tulane really hasn't been tested at all this year. The SMU outside of Ole Miss, this is going to be their biggest test. That's for sure. My model, again, doesn't see the Preston Stone injury explicitly, but my model makes this SMU -7. If you want to, how many points are you going to downgrade them? I mean, a field goal, 4 points. I think that you're even pushing it. That -7, it's already counting for the home field. So I'm not giving any more for that. Like, I think the wrong team's favored here, and I think there's a touchdown worth of value. Again, I could end up looking really silly, but that's what the model says, and I take comfort in knowing that that yours feels the same. I've talked about this game a couple other times this week, and it feels like everyone I talk to who's thinking about it analytically or kind of taking a similar approach has come to a same conclusion that I have. So if nothing else, I'm taking comfort in the fact that I'm not out on an island with the take.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing in the numbers that would, I run several formulas on the side, to help me kind of steer my bets. And there's just literally nothing, no formula that I can come up with that would put me on Tulane in this game. That's not to say they can't win, but, going into it, all we can do is trust the numbers, and the numbers tell me that SMU is the play here. I did, one thing to consider with SMU, you mentioned it, like Preston Stone doesn't play defense. They played Oklahoma earlier this year. And I know that Oklahoma's not the juggernaut that maybe at times we thought this season, but they still can light up a scoreboard on any given week. And SMU held them to 17 points.
It ended up being 20. It ended up being 28. It was 28-11, but still.
28. Okay. That's right. They lost by 17, but
yeah,
to only give up 28 to Oklahoma. I mean, that offense has scored 70 multiple times this year. So like, my bet on SMU is really as much or more about the defense as it is the SMU offense, which has also been very good. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I know that's, it's not going to be a hugely watched game or anything like that nationally with the casual fans, but I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see that. That's one of those games that we talk about. Like I'm curious to see, because the analytics are so lopsided and against Vegas here. Like I'm just curious to see how it plays out. But I think that's going to do it for our marquee matchups. Really looking forward to all three of those. Let's get into our rapid fire. We're just going to rapid fire the rest of the slate here this week, excluding Army Navy, because I somehow missed that and it's not on my sheet. So excluding Army Navy, Kelly, if you want to,
Army Navy's next week. We're good. You got another week.
Okay. Well, that's why it wasn't on my sheet then. I see it on the odds screen, but I didn't see it on my sheet, and I couldn't figure out why. Okay. All right. So we're good. I'm not a total idiot. All right. Liberty hosting New Mexico State in the Conference USA Championship. Line currently Liberty minus 11 with a total of 54. I project Liberty minus 15.5, and I'm right in line on the total with a projected total of 54.
I'm Liberty 12.5, so I'm with you on that side. Not quite as much value my model would suggest as yours, but definitely with you on the Liberty side.
Yeah, and Liberty is one of those teams. Had I just trusted TSI all season, I would have made a killing betting Liberty. And I did bet them a few times, but it was like, man, my numbers are just so high on them, but they just continue to cover. Like I've been kind of gun shy on pulling the trigger on betting them, but they've just continued to cover games. It's been unreal, the run that they've been on. The MAC championship, Toledo and Miami at Ford Field, I believe. Toledo, an 8-point favorite with an over-under of 46.5. I project Toledo minus 6 with a total of 50.5. And an injury note there, Miami of Ohio without quarterback Blaine Gabbert. I think he missed the last game and got hurt 2 games ago, if I recall correctly. So we do have a little bit of data on Miami without him, but nonetheless, their team power rating leads this to a Toledo minus 6 line for me.
And I have Toledo minus 4. Again, not explicitly accounting for Gabbert on the other side there, but Toledo minus 4 is what my model has.
All right, Big 12. I don't see this as a close game. The betting market doesn't see this as a close game. I know there's going to be a lot of eyeballs. If you're rooting for chaos, you're hoping for an Oklahoma State upset here. But Texas, a 15.5-point favorite. I project Texas minus 18.5. The over-under sitting at 54, and I project 51 in this game.
Yeah, this number has crept up and up and up, and I'm suggesting it's still not quite enough. I've got Texas minus 17 in this one. I would be pretty surprised if Oklahoma State found a way to win it. Hey, the Big 12 has always given us surprises. So if it's any conference that's going to do it, it's going to be this one. But as you look at this game objectively from a numbers standpoint, Texas has just about every significant advantage, and in some cases, it's a little bit lopsided even. So Texas minus 17 is what my model has.
Yeah, and Oklahoma is just one of the most Jekyll and Hyde teams. I mean, sometimes they look great, and sometimes they lose by 20-some points to South Alabama at home. So, like, you don't know what Oklahoma State team is going to show up. Sun Belt Championship, Troy hosting Appalachian State. Troy, a 5.5-point favorite with a total of 51.5. I project Troy minus 7.5 with a total of 50.
Boom. I'm right there with you. Troy minus 7.5 for me in this one.
And then another, game that kind of lost its luster a little bit with a quarterback injury. Florida State, Louisville in the ACC Championship. The line down to Florida State as a 1.5-point favorite. That's crazy. That thing has just trickled down all week. Total at 53.5. I project Florida State minus 8.5 with a total of 53. Obviously, Jordan Travis not being there, he would be one of the more valuable players to the spread. I thought the earlier week line was probably more accurate. I think you probably should adjust about 6 points for Jordan Travis is probably what I would do if I was manually adjusting. So I thought the 2.5 line made sense early in the week, and it's people are still buying on Louisville even at that number.
I would suggest, Tyler, even 6 is too much, even for a player like Jordan Travis. I just don't think any college player, even quarterbacks, are worth as much as Vegas seems to think and the general public seems to think when it comes to setting these lines. My numbers, again, not explicitly accounting for the Travis injury, see Florida State minus 9.5. Now, the model does know something's up with this Florida State offense and the one game it had Rodemaker at quarterback, because the offense fell from number 9 to number 12 just in 1 week here. That's a pretty significant drop for 1 week this late in the year. So the model definitely knows something has happened to the Florida State offense. It does not necessarily know that it's Jordan Travis isn't playing, but it sees, whoa, this was bad. Certainly not what we expected. we're starting to adjust for it. But it's not caught up, of course, to the no Jordan Travis with only one game of data, or a game and a half, I guess, if you count North Alabama game. But yeah, again, like I talked about with Preston Stone, how many points are you giving for Jordan Travis here? Because the line's 1.5. I say it's 9.5. It's not 9.5, but he's not worth 8 points. So my model would suggest that there's value on Florida State, even at the current line, the number that it is. And so that's where I'm at with this one. Certainly very curious to see how this game plays out. Florida State has everything on the line, a chance to see a trip to the CFP included in that. So be very curious to see what happens.
Yeah, I think from a betting standpoint, I'm probably staying off of that game because situationally, I would want to be on Louisville coming off the loss to Kentucky. You know, I know that's a rivalry game for them that they obviously care about, but they also had the ACC championship in their sights, which, you know, isn't something that happens for them every year. It's not like they're, you know, one of these teams that is perennially, I can't even say it. You know what I'm trying to say? Is always in the conference championship game. So I think they were in a bit of a look ahead last week. Kentucky got them. I think there's a great bounce back spot for Louisville. So I'm probably not going to bet this game because my numbers and my, you know, kind of situational analysis disagree here. Moving on to the Big Ten, Iowa and Michigan. Michigan, a 22-point favorite with a total of 35. I project Michigan minus 24. I project the total much higher at 43. I've said this all year with my numbers just cannot keep up with how bad Iowa is offensively because my numbers are geared, like my offensive ratings are geared towards adjusting for how many points you would score against the average FBS defense. So there's almost like a safety net, like you can't go super, super low because the average FBS team would be expected to at least score something against, you know, these teams, and Iowa just surpasses that. Like they've like broken my model almost. Like I'm having to reevaluate how I calculate totals because I'm on Iowa over every week, you know, by the numbers, and it doesn't work out. Like they just suck so bad on offense. It's crazy.
It certainly is crazy. Tyler, let me give you my unit ranks in this game here. I'll start with Michigan, the number 1 defense in the country, the number 6 offense. I'll give you Iowa now, the number 2 defense, the number 123 offense. I mean, it's just like, whoa, like it stands out beyond reason. Listen, here's my model makes it Michigan minus 22. So I'm right there with Vegas. Here's Iowa's path to victory because people have asked me, what's their path to victory? Here's your path to victory, Iowa. 6% chance, by the way, is what the model says. I think this is your starter kit. You need to win the turnover battle by at least 3, and you need to score at least 2 defensive and or special teams touchdowns. Like that's your baseline. If you don't clear those bars, you have no chance. And I'm not even saying that if you clear those bars, you're going to win. I'm saying those are the bars you have to clear, plus 3 or more in the turnover battle, 2+ defensive or special teams touchdowns. That is what it will take for you to be in this game in the fourth quarter, I believe. I think, Tyler, the most interesting thing about this game, the most interesting moment is likely going to be when Tony Petiti is on the stage after the game handing the trophy to Jim Harbaugh, a man that he has just suspended for 3 games. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't say it. Jim Harbaugh was suspended for 6 games this year. He was suspended for half of the season for various violations or allegations, whatever. That's a long time to be suspended away from your team. Michigan didn't bother them. 12-0. Here they go. 3rd straight Big Ten championship, 3rd straight trip to the CFP. It will be very interesting to see how they perform in the CFP this year with the last year's results and the year before still fresh in those players' minds who were a part of those teams. They have that extra motivation.
Last note here on this game, because I was curious as you were talking. I have Iowa. So when I do my full ratings, including FCS teams, I have Iowa's offense ranked 131st in all of Division I football. I have them behind over a dozen FCS teams. Like that is how bad their offense is. And I still can't keep up with how bad it is. Like, and I'm still projecting overs. Like that is absurd.
You have teams that really, they're outliers, right? And they strain the model. They break the model, as you said. And we walk a fine line trying to be as accurate as we can and trying to account for as many different angles and scenarios as we can in the model. And then also just acknowledging this specific profile of a team, of an offense, of a defense, whatever it is, like this specific makeup is an outlier in my model. And the model's really good and it performs really well. But this specific profile is something that is beyond the bounds and comprehension of my model. And so that's something that you'll have to grapple with over the summer, and how many changes you make versus just saying, hey, I know this is wrong. And that's the way it is, because no model's perfect. And every model has blind spots, right? Maybe this Iowa offense represents a blind spot within your model, and I'm sure many, many others.
I think the Iowa offense is a blind spot in and of itself. All right, that's way too much Iowa talk for this podcast. Moving on, last one, Mountain West Championship, UNLV hosting Boise State, who again fired their coach a few weeks ago and is in the Mountain West Championship after playing extremely well the last couple of weeks. Line currently sitting at Boise State -2.5 with a total of 58. I project Boise State -1 with a total of 57.
I'm Boise State -1.5. So I'm with you again. I think it's going to be a really close game, really good game. Being on the road at UNLV certainly makes a difference potentially in this one. But Boise State -1.5 for me. Yeah, not every day you see a team fire a coach late in the year and still potentially have a chance to win the conference championship. Boise State has that opportunity in Las Vegas this week.
Yeah, it should be a good one. That's one I may end up betting on UNLV. I think it's a good spot for them bouncing back from last week's game. Boise State's red hot, so I think it's a good spot for UNLV. That's going to do it for our championship week preview. We will be back next week, hopefully, to recap the final CFP rankings, talk about all that. Hopefully we'll be with you. Maybe we'll go to once a week through December. We'll see. We haven't quite ironed out the schedule yet to talk some bowl games and things like that and give our numbers and perspective on those games. But until then, make sure you follow Kelly on X at KFord Ratings. Follow me at T-Shoe Index. Get subscribed to Saturday Glory on YouTube. Until next time, for Kelly Ford, I'm Tyler Shoemaker, and that was Calculated Risk.